I smile as politely as possible at the doctor, withdrawing my hand and placing it back at my side. So, about those results. Oh, of course. He smiles in understanding, but it's a tight expression, one that makes me suppress a strange shudder. Are the results in relation to the recent murders? Hmm, I suppose that's pretty obvious. I shrug, letting out a small breath. Yes, it's hard to cover these types of things in a small town, I'd imagine. He suddenly takes a wide step forward, closing the gap between us. Although he's a slight man, it's hard to deny the power behind his presence. I swallow down the odd reaction, standing my ground. It would be good to know some more details of what you know about the murders, he says. That is something I can't discuss, I reply firmly. Dr. Murphy snatches out, grabbing my hand in both of his. I instinctually make to yank it back, but he grips it with surprising strength. His cold thumb rubs over my wrist. Why don't you relax? A prickle of fear crawls over my skin as I stare into the man's eyes, which, although framed with a few fine wrinkles, hold an unnerving amount of strength to them. Hmm. Take a quick step away. I rip my hand away and take a quick step back. The results, Dr. Murphy. My voice is unwavering and sharp. The doctor's face contorts into confusion before he stares down at his hands like they're broken tools. Hopefully, he's realizing just how creepy he is acting. But when he flicks his gaze back up to meet mine, his eyes shine with sudden excitement and a grim smile sits on his lips. Thank God he sticks to a lab. I certainly wouldn't want to meet him in a dark alley. I pursed my lips at the thought. Well, about that, I'll just get those results for you, detective, he says, turning and fishing through a pile of folders, each an inch thick with printouts. The soles of his shoes squeak against the linoleum floor as he shuffles from desk to desk. I grit my teeth to bear the noise, coupled with the endless wiring drone of the machines all about the room. After a few minutes, the doctor grasps a file and tugs it from a mountain of others. Ah, here we are. He spins to face me, then stumbles forward with a gasp. On instinct, I spring into action, dipping forward to save him from colliding with the center row of counters. His weight bashes into me like a toppling column, and I slam back into the table behind. My hand slaps down on the surface to take the brunt of the fall. Ah! Pain lashes over my hand, and I draw it to my chest with a hiss of pain. I can already feel the warm slickness of blood trickling from the cut without even looking at it. I'd managed to smash a beaker beneath my palm on impact with the countertop, a glass shard slicing across my skin. "Oh oh my," the doctor stutters, his gaze snapping to my injured head. I'm so sorry, detective. Here, let me. He whips out a handkerchief from his jacket pocket and makes to press it against my hand. Hmm. I've had worse, I say, snatching the tissue from his advancing hands and gritting my teeth as I press it against the stinging wound. Trust me. He doesn't make to reply, only continues to stare at my injured hand, eyes wide. He swallows hard. The cut throbs with pain so bad my eyes almost water, but I blink it back, keen to leave before anything else happens. It's not exactly been the best trip so far. I hold out my uninjured hand. The results. Dr. Murphy blinks out of his staring and shakes his head. Yes, yes, here. He slaps the weighty file into my hand. Thanks. I tuck the folder under my arm, my other hand clutched around the handkerchief. It seems to have stemmed the bleeding. When I turn to leave, Murphy's shoes squeak against the floor again. Can I ask where I might find you, just in case I get anything new on those results? I hold back a groan, turn on the spot, and just about manage to wiggle a card out from my jacket pocket. This is my name, also the address and phone number of the station. I'm usually there if you need to get hold of me. He flips the card over in his hands, a long smile on his lips. Thank you. Turning once more, I finally managed to leave the lab, shutting the door firmly behind me and letting out a long breath. Now I understand why Verda always rings the hospital and never comes in person. I shake my head, pain still pulsing through my hand. Thought I was going to have to press him hard to get those results. Thank God it didn't come to that. I don't want to be dealing with the police captain berating me for my treatment of professional colleagues. Time to get back to the office and hope the results turned up something that was worth going through all of that. Inside the lab, as soon as the door clicks shut, Murphy's eyes flutter closed. He takes a long draw of the scent of blood that lingers in the air. The smell of it lines his nostrils and throat, seeping over his tongue like an exquisite wine. It is so strong he can almost taste it. His eyes flicker open and he glances down at the broken beaker on the counter. The clear glass pieces are stained an opaque red with the detective's blood. He grins. It had been them he'd sensed the night before, the blood he needs, and they'd walked right into his lab. The irony of it makes Murphy chuckle. He would have missed it altogether if it hadn't been for the detective's immunity to his attempt at using pheromones. The disinfectant stench in this place masks everything to his acute senses, including the sweet scent of that blood. Grabbing a cotton swab from the side, he dabs the white pad against the line of blood, the red liquid looking like a vein against the countertop. It takes all his willpower not to lap it up from the surface with his tongue, but he has to test it to be sure. He caps a plastic counter over the sample, his attention caught by a small dribble dripping down the side of the counter. His lips purse, the smell of it taunting him, until finally he gives in. Running a finger up the side, he lets the blood pool on his fingertip. He brings it to his lips. The effect is instant. Murphy's mind bursts white hot, power coursing and surging through every muscle. Strength pours into his limbs like they're expanding with power. His hearing has sharpened to the point where he can hear the lumbered breaths of the receptionist at the front desk. His vision pierces into every small nook in the room. The feel of the cold of the countertop is like ice against his fingers as he clutches against it to stay standing. Even the brush of his clothes against his skin itches with the suddenness of feeling every fiber. His already heightened senses explode into overdrive, his eyes rolling back in ecstasy of it. And then it floods away. Murphy staggers, barely managing to stay on his feet as the feeling drains away. His hands shake, his knees weaken, and he has to pant for breath. If a small drop can do that, he smiles to himself at the thought of what the rest of the detective's blood could do, especially after Murphy has finished with him. Slumping into the nearby chair, he smiles again. The blood is untainted. Whatever vampire had masked the detective's scent before obviously isn't feeding from them. Maybe the vampire doesn't realize just what they had in their possession. Taking out the other vampire will be easy enough if they intervene, and Murphy has a way to do it without even getting his hands dirty. It would be well worth the risk to obtain his vessel. This is his last chance. This time he has to get it right. No more failures. Next chapter. At the station. When I arrive back at the station, it's far later than I had expected. The afternoon sun has lost its warmth, the bright rays already starting to dip below the horizon of trees. Checking my coat and things inside, I'm half surprised to find my office empty. Unit Bravo have obviously already headed home for the day. With a shrug, I head towards the basement, knowing Verda will be keen for the results. Down in the basement. Pushing open the doors, I step inside the bleak lab. A shudder runs through me at the reminder of what just happened at the hospital. Verda sits with his back to me, hunched over his desk and staring with full concentration through a microscope. Apparently not even the sound of the doors can distract him from his work. I smile at the sight. He's always been a hard worker, right from the moment he stepped inside the station after transferring in from the city a few months ago. The man had barely gotten through introductions before he was marching towards his new lab to handle the backlog. Sure. Not many in the station are overly science-minded, so when Verda joined, I was thrilled. The two of us quickly bonded over our shared interest, something which continues to this day. It's strange to think back on a time when he wasn't around. My smile widens as I shake the memory away. With the results gripped in my hands, I move towards the pathologist. He's still huddled over the microscope. I come bearing gifts. I step forward, slapping the paper down on the desk beside him. His focus shifts to the papers.
Excellent.
He then swings around to face me, blinking rapidly.
Sorry, I've been staring down that microscope too long. The world's got fuzzy.
I give a chuckle, but his attention doesn't remain on the papers long as he catches sight of my badly handkerchief bandaged hand.
What happened?
He throws down the file, stepping closer and reaching out to examine my injury. Thankfully, the bleeding stopped some time ago. Hmm. Idiot at the hospital, yeah. I let him tug away the handkerchief gently. The idiot blood tech at the hospital tripped and fell onto me. I managed to cut myself to avoid falling over completely. Verda frowns.
It looks worse than it is.
He glances up with a warm smile.
Come on, I'll clean it up and wrap it up for you.
I return the smile, giving a nod of gratitude and following him over to the first aid kit on the other side of the room. Whatever treatment he can offer will probably be much better than my attempt at bandaging it. Sometime later in the office. A few hours later, I lean back in my chair and let out a long sigh, folding my hands between my head. After stretching out my aching limbs, gained from hours of sitting in a half dilapidated office chair, I reach to take a sip of my drink, only to find stale dregs meeting my lips. I grimace, slamming the cup back down. The glare of my monitor is the only thing lighting the small space of my office. I glance about, trying to adjust my eyes to the darkness. I didn't notice exactly when the evening had fallen. A knock brings me out of my introspection. The click of the light switch being turned on catches my ears. Wincing against the sudden flash of artificial light, I manage to see Tina stepping into the room with a bright smile. "You're working late," she says, coming to perch on the edge of my desk. I glance over her, still clad in a stiff dark blue uniform. "So are you." "I just finished my shift," she replies, "but I wanted to catch you before you left." I raise a brow, waiting for her to continue. She half smiles. "Verda just let me know about something that might make this case weird." "Weird?" I say, shaking my head. "I don't think this case could get any weirder no matter what you say." Her pursed lips would say otherwise. "Verda managed to get DNA from the strange blood." "Any matches?" "He hasn't tried." She fidgets on the desk for a moment. "It's definitely not animal, but it certainly isn't human either." I don't understand. "Neither did he," she replies with a chuckle. "He says he's going to work on it, but he has to work out what kind of species the blood came from before anything else. So far, it's not anything he's found a genetic record for." Hmm. Hmm. On the bright side, maybe we've discovered a new species. Or at least it's blood. "A delightful thought, thanks for that," she says, her nose wrinkling. "Ugh, enough of that talk." She springs up from her place on the desk and grins. "I suggest we finally go out for drinks to celebrate your promotion. Everything's been so hectic from the minute you got the job. You haven't even had a chance to sit back and enjoy it." The idea is tempting, especially because she's right. My first day was welcomed with a gruesome murder rather than a chance to settle into my new role. Any opportunity I might have had to enjoy myself was thrown out of the window when this case started. I swivel around in my chair to face her, a smile still gracing her lips. Hmm. Not really a going out kind of person. You know that, I say with an arched brow. She sighs rather overdramatically and her shoulders sag. "Yeah, but I was just checking in case you wanted to. Never know when you might make an exception." "Well, thanks for the offer anyway." She shrugs. "You're welcome. I go celebrate for the both of us. Make sure to get some rest at some point though, alright?" I throw her a mock salute to which she rolls her eyes. Then she heads out of the office with bouncing steps. With just me and the night shift volunteer at the front desk, I settle back down to get some work finished so I can actually head home at some point tonight. A knock at the door just moments later has me sighing. Tina, honestly, just go already." My words stumble to a halt when I find it's not Tina at the door. Bobby gives a lopsided smile as she leans against the door frame. "Hey there, detective." "Leave." The one word comes out sharp from between my lips. "Oh, calm yourself," she replies, the smile turning into a smirk. "I promise I'll behave." I frown. "Tell me what you're doing here." "I've come to bug you," she replies, sauntering towards my desk, hips swaying as she goes while dragging a finger over the sideboard. At least that's what your receptionist assumed. Thinks I came to pester you for a story." She takes a seat, her long legs crossed elegantly. "Then why did they let you past?" I ask. She shrugs. "They don't usually, but seeing as you were here tonight, they obviously thought they'd let you deal with me instead. So you're gonna offer me a drink or what?" I glance over my shoulder to where she nodded her head. It's the cabinet where Detective Real kept her badly concealed stash of booze. Definitely not. I reply, folding my arms and keeping eye contact. She smiles and shakes her head. Shame. I don't bother replying. Quiet punctuates the small office, neither of us seeming to want to break it first, but it apparently starts to become too heavy for even Bobby to handle. Look, Detective, I know you don't think much of how I'm reporting on this case. You're not reporting, you're creating delusions to sell papers. Something that has worked very successfully for me, she replies without missing a beat, a smirk playing at her lips. I turn my nose up at the reply, glancing away. Bobby shrugs, hands held wide. But no matter what I'm reporting, I'm still a citizen of Wayhaven. Your point? I ask. My point is, I don't much like living in a town where a psycho is running around. She stands from the chair and then leans both hands on the desk. Your failures may sell my paper, but they don't exactly help me walk home calmly in the dark. You know what I mean? I stare over her for the longest moment. You're actually scared? I wouldn't exactly say scared. She pushes herself up, rubbing a hand over the curve of her neck. Terrified would be more accurate. She then chuckles, smiling brightly. It's certainly not what I was expecting to hear from her. This case really must be getting to her if she's willing to come to me and actually admit that she's scared. Unless it could all just be an act. I purse my lips, staring over her in examination. Hmm. I'm not sure. Better play it safe. She's too complicated a person to easily work out her intentions, so I shake my head and decide it's better to play it safe. I stand from my chair with a sigh. We're doing all we can to catch the killer. Bobby's lips twitch and she folds her arms, her crisp white shirt creasing a little with the motion. We? So there are others involved with the case? I mean, obviously, what kind of murder? It's the most important case this town has seen in the last century. You really think there's one detective involved and no one else? Ugh. I groan in frustration, moving out from behind my desk and striding towards the door. Unless there's anything else. You could be a little more sympathetic, you know? She swipes back her caramel colored hair, waves of it pouring over her shoulders, and glides toward me in heels so high I can barely believe she's able to balance on them. Maybe even offer a little comfort? I'm about to reply when a clatter comes from the back of the station. The night shift volunteer also glances up, both of us frowning in confusion at the noise. It should only be us here. I narrow my eyes at Bobby. You should go. Then, with quick steps before she has chance to make another quip or suggestive comment, I march out of my office and towards the back doors behind the kitchen area.